Today on Investigate TV Plus, is working less the key to producing more? I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. More American workers support a 4-day work week, but some employers worry they could get shortchanged by a shorter schedule. Plus, you don't need to be in your prime to play. Pickleball is growing in popularity, but an injury could sour all that fun.
I think people can get carried away sometimes as part of the problem.
We speak to a doctor about the game's most common injuries and what you can do to prevent them.
And he found a career in science.
And the thing about surface science is that you're examining at the atomic level what the atoms are doing on the surface.
But discovered a passion for art.
Think about all of these pieces, they look beautiful, I think.
In-depth stories that inform and inspire. You're watching Investigate TV Plus.
Back in the 1920s, Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company, bucked the norm of a 6-day work week by establishing the now standard 5-day, 40-hour week, with no loss of pay for having Saturdays off. Now, more than 100 years later, the 4-day work week looks to be gaining traction across the U.S.
A 2023 Bankrate survey found 81% of the full-time workforce would prefer it. And from the employer perspective, research by ResumeBuilder.com suggests companies may be warming up to the idea as well. 20% of surveyed business leaders said their company currently offers at least some workers a 4-day week, and 41% said they have plans to implement it.
But is it a viable solution to worker burnout or a productivity pitfall? Reporter Heather Graff takes an in-depth look.
There's probably at least 5 active projects that I work on at a time.
Gabby Machaver loves a lot of things about her job at Friendly Design Company.
It's been fantastic.
And that includes her schedule.
So you're working an 8-hour day, 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Would you ever go back or want to go back to a 5-day work week?
I honestly don't think so. I think I'm really content with a 4-day work week, and I have loved having Fridays to kind of wake up on my own schedule.
Gabby's bosses at this Washington, D.C. based design studio implemented a Monday through Thursday work week starting in the summer of 2022.
It seemed like it could work out based on the type of work that we do and the tools that we use.
But when project director Elisa Schrader first looked into it, she admits not everyone was on board.
I recall one reaction, which was, we have so much work, how can we possibly fit it into 4 days?
I think that was me. I think it probably was me. I was skeptical.
That's Friendly Design's co-founder, Ross Nover.
So much of our work starts from a place of how long will this take us to do? And so to say we're going to have less time to do it felt scary.
Still, he agreed to try it, and so this office joined about 40 other companies across the U.S. and Canada for a coordinated pilot program run by an organization called 4-Day Week Global.
I believe in the 4-day work week because, I have seen hundreds of companies around the world in all kinds of industries do it.
Alex Sujung Kim Pang helps lead the team at 4-Day Week Global and has partnered with researchers at the University of Cambridge and Boston College for a series of trials stretching from North America to the United Kingdom, Portugal, Brazil, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand.
Everybody we work with has the aim of sort of cutting working hours for everybody without cutting anybody's salary.
To date, he says they're seeing outcomes that are overwhelmingly positive. For instance, in the study that Friendly Design took part in, they found 89% of companies are definitely planning to continue the 4-day work week, with the remaining 11% leaning in that direction. And among employees, that same study reports 7 in 10 workers experienced reductions in burnout, while 95% wanted to continue the 4-day work week.
So retention goes up, recruitment goes up quite a bit. The benefits of what fundamentally is a really simple intervention, right? Giving people more time.
Results that Maryland state lawmaker Vaughn Stewart says he was inspired by.
I see this breathtaking, startling study from them. And so when I got that, that's when I started to say, I wonder if there's something we could do with regards to state legislation.
In early 2023, Stewart introduced House Bill 181 that would offer state tax credits to Maryland employers who experiment with a 4-day work week.
If employers were willing to take that leap of faith, we thought that it would be in the state government's interest to give them a tax credit to motivate them to do that.
Am I correct that your legislation was first of its kind in the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely, you're correct. I've gotten emails from colleagues across the country that essentially want to copy our bill.
And Stewart says those inquiries kept coming, even as his initial attempts here in Maryland were unsuccessful.
This idea was in some ways too big and too new and too crazy for a lot of my colleagues to wrap their head around. It challenges really norms that a lot of people grew up with.
Despite that, he's not giving up and plans to introduce an updated proposal in the next legislative session.
Do you think that the 4-day work week is the future?
Yes. I think inevitably we're going to move to shortened work weeks. I think the question is really when rather than if.
But at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, Professor of Practice Rick Smith shared a different perspective.
I would definitely advocate that this is not a silver bullet.
What are some of your biggest concerns with this concept?
That it doesn't apply equally to everyone in every situation. In other words, for some employers, that's problematic. If we're running a retail organization, if we're running a hospital, other things that require staff to be there.
Instead, in this post-pandemic world, Smith suggests the answer to work-life balance issues might be more nuanced and vary by industry.
Varying the number of work hours in a day, or taking a large break in the middle of the day, or using Wednesdays as a work from home day.
In the meantime, he believes more study of the 4-day work week is needed.
I think the key aspect is looking at the productivity over a long period of time.
I could do it after this.
And that brings us back to the Friendly Design Company in D.C.
I've found that my time management is even better.
We already knew Gabby is happy with the shortened work week. But what about Ross, the company co-founder, who had serious worries about fitting 5 days of work into 4?
It won you over.
It very much did. We're still accomplishing the same amount of work, really just in less time. If anything, we're just cutting out a lot of the nonsense around it.
No regrets in this office, and he says no plans to switch back.
You really just have to try it and see how it goes, and I think it is very much worth trying.
Reporter Heather Graff joins us now. Heather, what about at the federal level? Any discussions there on the future of the work week?
Tisha, a congressman out of California has introduced legislation he calls the 32-Hour Work Week Act. Now, it would not limit the number of hours someone can work in a single week, but employers would be required to pay overtime for anything above 32 hours.
Heather, has it gotten any support?
Lee, a few of the big labor unions did endorse it, but I can tell you that bill was first introduced in 2021, then reintroduced in 2023, and so far it has failed to advance in Congress. Meanwhile, the organization 4-Day Week Global says it's working on some more long-term studies. To see their latest results from companies at the 12-month mark, just go to 4dayweek.com.
I always say the hardest part about work is actually getting up, getting dressed, and getting there. So if I have to stay longer, like 4 days of 10 hours, I think that's a good idea.
You like that?
Yeah.
The one thing I'm thinking of, because both of us have kids, and
Yeah,
like,
that's true
teachers,
too.
do you do that? I don't want my kids home 3 days a week. I'm sorry.
That's
right?
true too.
Can you imagine juggling that? I love my kids. I do.
I know.
I know. All right.
Well, still to come, more people are picking up pickleball, but
it hurts. It hurts a lot.
The game can also jar a player's body.
Yeah, I think they just underestimate the effect on their joints sometimes.
We ask an expert about what you can do to avoid an injury on the court.
Plus, we examine the high cost of identity crimes in the African American community and show you the steps to lower your chances of being taken.
Identity theft can happen to anyone, but identity crimes have had a unique impact on the African American community. According to the Federal Trade Commission, African Americans are victims of identity theft more often than the rest of the U.S. population.
A January 2023 study by the Identity Theft Resource Center found 16% of identity theft crime victims who were Black lost more than $5,000 to criminals. In the same study, researchers found that victims did not just lose money, they lost time spent resolving their issues.
Consumer investigator Carice Jackman spoke with the authors of the report about what you need to know so you can protect your information.
The Black Researchers Collective prides itself on taking their research to the streets, helping to train and equip communities with information about policy. It's why Sherry Runner and Dr. Glennis Green say issuing this report on identity crimes impacting African Americans is vital.
We want to make sure that we are adding to the positive restoration of those communities and not just doing the research for the sake of saying that this happened.
The study, in collaboration with the Identity Theft Resource Center, or ITRC, spoke with focus groups from 3 major cities with large Black populations, asking about experiences with ID theft, how they've protected themselves against it, and if they were able to recover when compromised.
Some of the most prevalent incidents of victimization fell within 5 or 6 categories. 1, through bank accounts, credit cards, and checks. 2, income tax, unemployment or other types of scams. 3 was really around the misuse of personal identity information in childhood when they were younger. The 4th one was really around phone, utility bills. And the 5th one was really around car, home, and student loans.
Of those who were the victims of identity crimes within the last 5 years, at least a quarter were victimized during the pandemic. Most participants told the organizations they were taken advantage of by strangers. However, 40% recounted various incidents carried out by people they knew, with a majority being family members, which Dr. Green says could be a personal and complex battle for those exploited.
As it pertains to family members, there's something very unique to the Black cultural experience that shaped whether or not folks made a decision to address those things. We depend on one another. We support one another. In addition to that, we are working within structures that have historically oppressed us as well, right? And so the people that we're going to for support and remediation, one, and this came up in the study, don't really necessarily believe the stories that we're telling them. There aren't any really clear pathways for it necessarily being resolved.
To help reduce the risk of identity theft, James Lee with the ITRC says you can do things ahead of time to lower the chances of your info being taken.
You need to make sure that you keep your personal information safe and secure, that you use strong, long passwords on your accounts that you use online.
He also says if you're using a lot of accounts online, make sure you're using multi-factor authentication and make sure you keep your records safe and secure.
We know in these particular cases, because it is a family situation in many cases, make sure that you keep that information restricted to only people who really need it. And this is going to be the tough part, is making sure that you understand the consequences of what happens if your information is compromised and you don't do something to try to remedy that. And explain that consequence to your family members as well.
Both the ITRC and the Black Researchers Collective plan on doing more studies, programs, and public awareness in those cities and hopefully others across the country, not only to reduce ID theft in Black communities, but to inform, educate, and inspire the community.
Your personal identity is information, and data is information, and information is power. So use that. Remember that as you think about it.
Still to come, a retired scientist inspired by life's imperfections.
Here, well, I don't know where the atoms are.
To carve out a legacy in his workshop that will live on for generations.
But first, picking up a paddle to play America's fastest growing sport could come with pain. A doctor serves up advice on preventing injuries on the pickleball court.
With words like flapjack, dinner, kitchen, and open face, you may think we're talking about a new restaurant, but we are not. These are all terms used in pickleball, which USA Pickleball reported in 2023 had nearly 9 million players volleying and dinking on courts across the country.
Pickleball is a mashup of ping pong, tennis, and badminton. It's actually been around since 1965, but has recently exploded in popularity.
While there are numerous social and physical benefits to playing the sport, there is also a growing list of injuries that could put players in a pickle. At Holyoke Community College in Massachusetts, Sharon Grundle manages healthcare training programs and enjoys playing a good game of pickleball. But Sharon admits all that fun on the court can come with a risk.
I was hit in the eye with a pickleball at close range.
Barbara Johnson plays with Sharon. Barbara says she's experienced the joy of winning and witnessed the agony of an injury.
I was just playing with a friend a few weeks ago and he ruptured his Achilles tendon while we were playing. And my sister, who lives in North Carolina, sprained her wrist when she fell playing pickleball.
I see a lot of falls, things like wrist fractures.
Duke orthopedic surgeon Jocelyn Whitstein specializes in sports medicine. She not only treats pickleball injuries, but she plays pickleball with her family too. Dr. Whitstein says a majority of her pickleball injured patients are older adults who may push themselves a little too hard on the court.
The most common thing I see is people coming in with knee pain and swelling, so that tends to be that group over the age of 50 that's maybe developing some early knee arthritis.
A 2019 report in the Journal of Emergency Medicine echoes Dr. Whitstein. It found more than 19,000 pickleball injuries occur every year, with 90% of them affecting people aged 50 and older. Another study published in Injury Epidemiology found wrist and lower leg injuries were most common, mainly due to slips, trips, falls, and dives on the pickleball court.
Playing sports where you might take a fall or a spill on a hard surface does put people at risk for fractures.
971.
To help protect against getting hurt, Dr. Whitstein says make sure you understand the sport and what your body can tolerate.
It's probably a good idea to kind of assess your balance and your agility. If you don't have good balance, this is probably not a good sport to take up.
She says strengthening your lower body and core can help with balance and coordination. And Dr. Whitstein recommends taking it easy if it's your first time hitting the court.
Maybe don't go out there for 2 hours the first time you play, or just be thoughtful about not playing too aggressively, maybe not going for every shot.
As for Sharon, she now wears protective eyewear when she plays and encourages others to stay in the game.
And I knew that this was something that was pretty popular and that bringing some classes to the college would be a lot of fun.
If you do get hurt playing pickleball, the doctor we spoke to says you should follow the RICE protocol. Step 1, rest. Step 2, ice. 3, compression. And step 4, elevation. Dr. Whitstein says you could also try an over-the-counter pain reliever. She adds that a turmeric supplement can help reduce knee pain in people with mild arthritis. Be sure to call a doctor if the injury doesn't get any better after a few days, or if you heard or felt a pop.
Up next, a retired scientist carves out a second chance from what some may see as scraps.
This would make a good heavy bench or table.
From atoms to wood grains, how he finds the beauty in the abstract.
He found success in science and was inspired to branch out during his retirement.
Reporter Joe Carroll introduces us to the retiree who carved out a passion for something deeply rooted in Vermont.
At a lumberyard in Underhill, Isaac Cowan and John Weaver have become fast friends.
There was some thin stuff there too.
Isaac logs much of his 120 acres of mostly forested land. A while back, he posted online for free scrap wood. John, however, wasn't looking to heat his house.
That'll show up nicely.
Just a burning desire to save the scraps.
This would make a good heavy bench or table.
You should have seen the look on his face when he first started, figuring out what this piece of wood would turn into.
What John did was transform these pieces into tables, benches, and some would call works of art.
The thing about all of these pieces is they look beautiful, I think.
The finishing touches happen in his basement in Jericho.
So this is where you spend a lot of your time?
Yes. several hours a day.
It all started when John made a few dozen coasters taken from a tree branch in their backyard. Now, 2 rooms are full of woodcraft.
That's an interesting piece.
And 100% of the profits from the sales go to support area food shelves and helping the homeless.
Shall we flip it over?
The couple came to Vermont from Illinois about a decade ago to be closer to their daughter.
If you zoom in, you see all the grain.
John retired from a career far different from his hobby.
And the thing about surface science is that you're examining at the atomic level what the atoms are doing on the surface and how they're different from atoms in the bulk.
Translated, John is wicked smart. He was a world leader in physics and nanoscience, named the 1997 Scientist of the Year by Research and Development magazine.
I was amazed. Yeah. The guy who got it the year before was the fellow who developed the internet.
Here you have
nature. Yeah, physics with things that are very predictable. Quantum mechanics, which is well understood. I can tell you why that atom is there and what it's doing. Here, well, I don't know where the atoms are.
What the 77-year-old does know, there's beauty in these imperfections.
And that's what makes it beautiful, I think.
Back at the mill,
that'll be beautiful.
Wood destined to go up in flames,
you could make multiple tables.
will now live on for generations.
Here and make it into a coffee table. It's going to be a very pretty piece.
And that's it for us on Investigate TV Plus. I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. Thanks for watching. Next time on Investigate TV Plus.
Where you live should not determine if you get access to care and the quality of that care.
Millions live in so-called ambulance deserts.
It's ridiculous to live in a country like the United States and have this poor of a healthcare system.
We reveal why ambulance services are taking longer to get to some homes and the price small communities pay.